There is a kind of pain that does not scream. It does not bleed or beg for the tension. It sits quietly behind the eyes, beneath the ribs, hidden in the places where smiles live and where others seldom look. It is the pain of being misunderstood, betrayed, forgotten, or worse, deliberately wounded by someone who once claimed to care. And in that lonely ache, a question rises. Does anyone see this? Does anyone truly know what they did to me? You may have carried such pain in silence for months, years, or decades, walking into rooms with your heart shattered and your voice steady, pretending the storm never touched you. But deep down you hope that heaven noticed what people ignored, that God kept record of what they tried to erase, that your quiet suffering did not vanish into the cold, indifferent silence of the world. Let me tell you something, not as a preacher of sermons, but as a fellow soul that has known sorrow. Your pain has not been wasted, and your tears have not evaporated without witness. Heaven has seen it all. It is a great lie, perhaps the cruelest of all lies, that pain is pointless, that it is just a random misfortune to be endured. But pain, in the hands of God, is never meaningless. It is not always punishment, nor is it always proof of weakness. Sometimes it is preparation. Sometimes it is preservation. Sometimes it is the very hand of God pulling you out of places that would have destroyed you. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, cast into prison. For years he could have cried, "Why?" And yet when his story unfolded, he did not say, "My brothers ruined me." He said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." That is not denial. That is not delusion. That is divine perspective. Maybe your heart has been shattered, not to punish you, but to teach you how to rebuild it with the hands of heaven. Maybe the people who walked away were not rejecting you. They were being removed to make space for something holy. Maybe the nights you spent asking why were the nights God was preparing an answer you couldn't yet understand. And yes, I know, these are hard truths to accept when the pain is still fresh, when the betrayal still echoes, when the world tells you to move on, but your soul hasn't caught up. But here is where it becomes beautiful. God is not like people. He does not forget what others have conveniently dismissed. He does not mock the broken or abandon the bruised. He is not impressed by those who appear strong on the outside but are cruel within. Instead, he is near to the broken-hearted. He binds up their wounds, and he stores every tear you've ever cried. There is no act of cruelty too small that escapes his notice. No whispered insult, no hidden betrayal, no unseen rejection goes unseen by the one who sees all. You do not need to scream to be heard by him. You do not need to prove your worth to earn his help. He saw it, he knew it, and he was already working on the other side of it before you even knew it happened. Sometimes need stop the storm, because the storm reveals what needed to be removed. Sometimes he doesn't expose the liar immediately, because he is allowing their own actions to be their judgment. Sometimes he doesn't answer your cries right away, because he is writing a story so beautiful, so redeeming, so holy, that a rushed ending would not do it justice. So dear heart, if you're still bleeding, bleed in hope. If you're still waiting, wait with faith. If you're still aching, ache with the assurance that your pain has purpose, and heaven has recorded every second of it. Don't believe the silence is absence. Don't confuse the delay with neglect. Don't let the cruelty of others define the kindness of your God. Because one day, maybe when you least expect it, your healing will arrive. Not as revenge, not as some shallow compensation, but as restoration, as divine poetry, as a new beginning so profound, it will make the pain worth enduring. And when that day comes, you'll look back, not to curse the past, but to thank the God who carried you through it. And even as you walk through the valley now, when answers feel distant and comfort feels delayed, I want you to remember something sacred. Just because justice hasn't knocked on their door yet, doesn't mean it isn't on its way. God's justice doesn't arrive on our timetable, but it always arrives. Not loud, not rushed, but sure and steady like the rising of the sun. And when it comes, it doesn't just vindicate you, it transforms you. You see, the people who hurt you never had the final word. Their silence, their cruelty, their betrayal, those were only lines in a longer story. And the story doesn't end there. The pain you carry today is not the whole plot. There is more being written. There is a chapter of restoration that is not a fantasy. It is a divine appointment. The same hands that molded the stars are at work behind the scenes of your suffering. The author has not forgotten you. He is writing beauty into your brokenness, purpose into your pain, and glory into what the world calls failure. Sometimes we want immediate relief, but God wants eternal results. We beg for an escape, but He builds us through endurance. That's not cruelty, that's compassion, on a level we can't always understand. For if He gave us what we asked for when we asked for it, we might settle for something far smaller than what He intended. Your delay is not denial, it is preparation. It is the careful construction of something that will not collapse the next time life tries to break you. And perhaps that's what they never understood. They thought they were burying you, but they were planting you. They thought they were ending your story, but they were turning the page. You may not have had the strength to stop them, but you had something stronger, the favor of the one who sees everything. They took their best shot, and you're still standing. That's not weakness, that's grace. Sometimes grace doesn't look like angel wings and glowing light. Sometimes grace looks like the quiet ability to get up one more time, to forgive without getting an apology, to keep walking when you have no clear map, to smile when no one asks how you're doing. That is strength not made by man. That is the strength of heaven filling your soul, drop by drop. You didn't survive on your own. You were carried, even when you didn't feel it. It may still hurt, and that's okay. Healing is not the absence of pain. It is the shift in where that pain leads you. When pain drives you to bitterness, it rots the soul. But when it drives you to God, it refines you. What they did may still sting, but it doesn't own you anymore. You are not defined by the wounds. They are part of your history, not your identity. You are being made new, not by pretending the pain didn't happen, but by letting God use it to shape something stronger in you. So let them talk, let them pretend, let them continue their stories built on illusion and denial. Your story is being written by a higher hand. Their peace may be temporary, built on silence and avoidance. Yours will be eternal, forged through fire and crowned with truth. Let that comfort you when it feels unfair. Let that be your calm when the ache tries to rise again. Because here's the truth they never realized. You were never weak for feeling. You were never foolish for trusting. And you were never alone in your weeping. Heaven was closer than your breath in those moments you thought you were breaking. Every time you swallowed your voice to keep the peace, every time you cried behind closed doors, every time you collapsed and still chose to believe. It was all seen, it was all counted, it was all sacred, and it will all be redeemed. You will not carry this forever. The weight will lift. Not because the past disappears, but because it will no longer have the power to hold you down. And when the time comes, you will rise, not with vengeance, but with vision, not with anger, but with anointing, not to prove them wrong, but to prove that God is faithful. You are not who they said you were. You are not the sum of their rejection. You are not the echo of their cruelty. You are the beloved of the Most High, and He is not finished with you yet. The very pain that tried to destroy you is becoming the foundation for your greatest strength. It may not look like it now, but you are being rebuilt, quietly, powerfully, eternally. And when the rebuilding is done, nothing will ever shake you the same way again. There's a kind of strength that only comes from being broken, a strength that cannot be learned in peace or comfort. It is forged in the heat of disappointment, in the silence of lonely nights, in the ache of being left behind by those you once would have given everything for. This kind of strength isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It simply exists, steady, unwavering, rooted in something deeper than explanation. And that's what is growing in you now, even if you don't feel it yet. You've cried prayers that had no words. You've sighed in rooms where no one heard. You've walked into days with a face of peace while carrying a heart full of pain. And somehow, despite it all, you're still standing. Maybe trembling, maybe tired, but still here. And that is not accidental. That is not weakness. That is proof that God is not done with you, that your journey has not ended, that your purpose was never dependent on their permission. Let the world misread you. Let them talk while you heal. Your healing is not for them. It's between you and God. And He doesn't need an audience to restore what was broken. Sometimes He works in hidden places so no one can interfere. Sometimes He allows you to be isolated so your foundation is built on truth, not performance. What feels like abandonment might just be the rearranging of your life by divine hands, not to leave you empty, but to leave you open for what is better. And yes, it's hard to wait, especially when your heart aches for justice, especially when your soul longs to see them admit what they did or feel what they made you feel. But God's justice is not like man's revenge. His justice is righteous. It restores what was stolen. It lifts what was crushed. It doesn't just punish, it purifies. So even while it feels like nothing is happening, everything is happening. The soil of your pain is becoming the ground for your growth. The seasons you thought were silent were not silent at all. Heaven was speaking through every still moment. God was working in every delay. You were not being ignored. You were being refined. And when He brings you out, when the weight is finally lifted and you can breathe without flinching, you will see what it was all for. The betrayal, the loss, the silence, the confusion, it was not your end, it was your beginning. And though they may continue pretending, continuing their lives as if they've done no wrong, know this: God is not mocked. He sees the unseen. He weighs the heart. No lie hides forever. No mask stays on eternally. In time, every false thing falls apart. In time, every hidden wound is acknowledged. And you, who stood in silence, who bore the pain with grace, will be raised not in bitterness, but in glory. That's the part they didn't see. That's the part they never considered. They thought your silence was weakness. They mistook your grace for naivety. They believed that walking away or causing harm without consequence meant they were free. But there's a kind of freedom that is an illusion, and there's a kind of silence that is louder than 1,000 screams. You weren't silent because you were defeated. You were silent because you were being prepared. The pain wasn't a punishment, it was a passage. And now, step by step, that passage is leading you somewhere holy, somewhere new, somewhere stronger. The wounds you carry are not shameful, they are sacred. They mark not your ruin, but your resurrection. You are being rebuilt with patience, with wisdom, with the kind of love that does not abandon you when you're shattered. A love that doesn't need applause. A love that heals from the inside out. So when the memories try to haunt you, when your mind brings back the moments of betrayal or abandonment, remind yourself you are not there anymore. You may still feel the echo, but you're no longer in that room. You are walking out of the shadows, and you are not walking alone. Heaven has not only seen your tears, it has held them, stored them, watered the seeds of your future with them. Every night of anguish has not been wasted. Every moment of endurance has not gone unnoticed. Even when no one else clapped for your survival, heaven celebrated your resilience, and the celebration is not over yet. What is ahead of you will silence what is behind you, not by erasing it, but by showing it had purpose. And when that purpose unfolds, you will not need to shout. You will not need to prove anything. Your peace will speak louder than your pain ever did. Your restoration will declare what your words never could, and the world will have no choice but to see what God always knew you were becoming. There is something unexplainably powerful about a person who has suffered deeply and still chooses to be kind. Not naive kindness, not performative peace, but the kind of quiet mercy that grows from knowing what it's like to be hurt and deciding not to pass that hurt on to others. That is who you are becoming, not hardened by betrayal, but softened by grace. Not bitter from the pain, but wiser because of it. And that wisdom will protect you in ways you never imagined. You'll start to notice things sooner. You'll sense dishonesty in a handshake, betrayal in a glance, or manipulation in a smile. Not because you're suspicious, but because pain taught you how to see clearly. You'll no longer ignore red flags just to feel wanted. You'll no longer beg to stay in places where you're tolerated instead of loved. You'll remember what it cost you to ignore the warning signs, and you'll never make that mistake again. This is what healing does. It doesn't just make you feel better, it makes you see better. It sharpens your discernment. It breaks your addiction to chaos. It teaches you how to walk away from what breaks your spirit, even if it offers you comfort. Healing doesn't mean you forget what happened. It means you learn to live above it. It means you carry the lesson, not the wound. And that's why your story matters. Because someone out there is carrying the same pain you once did. They're weeping in silence. They're wondering if they're crazy for feeling so deeply. They're blaming themselves for being betrayed. And when they see you whole, calm, at peace, they'll realize there's hope, not because you preached at them, but because you lived through what they're barely surviving. Your healing will speak to them louder than any sermon ever could. What they did to you was not fair, it was not right, and no amount of growth or wisdom will ever make it okay. But it also does not get to define you anymore. You are not their cruelty, you are not their lies, you are not the way they dismissed your heart. You are something far more enduring than their opinions. You are chosen, you are carried, you are being restored by a God who makes no mistakes. And while it may seem that they're flourishing now, that life has rewarded them for their deception. Do not be fooled. There is no real peace in false living. There is no true joy in a soul that harms others without remorse. Even if the outside looks beautiful, the inside rots. And while they may appear to rise, they are only rising toward a greater fall, unless they repent. That's not your judgment, that's truth. But your focus is no longer on them. Your eyes are lifting higher. Your spirit is leaning into something eternal. And as you rise, you'll notice how little they matter now. Not because they didn't hurt you, but because they no longer have the power to. What once triggered your tears will one day provoke only compassion. What once made you question your worth will one day remind you how far you've come, and you'll see them not as giants who crushed you, but as lessons that shaped you. You won't need revenge. You won't crave recognition. You'll carry a peace that speaks for itself, a peace that is earned, not gifted, a peace that has walked through fire and come out singing, a peace that whispers to others in pain, "You can survive this too." So let the past be what it was. Let it sit where it belongs, behind you. Don't keep revisiting the places that broke you, hoping to find closure. Your healing is the closure. Your peace is the full stop. And God is not calling you to fix what others destroyed. He's calling you to build something new, something they can't touch, can't taint, can't take credit for. And as you build, you'll feel Him nearer than ever, not shouting, not demanding, but gently guiding, whispering truths to your heart that override the lies you were told, reminding you that you were never a mistake, that your pain wasn't punishment, that your story still matters. You are rising not in spite of the pain, but because of it. And as you rise, heaven rises with you. Every step forward is proof that darkness did not win, that cruelty did not have the final say, that love, real, divine love, is still writing the ending of your story. And as your story unfolds, there will come a moment, quiet and almost unnoticeable, when you realize you haven't thought about them in days. Not with anger, not with longing, not with pain. Just silence. A clean space inside you where the wound used to live. That moment won't be marked by fireworks or applause, but it will feel like freedom. Because healing doesn't always scream. Sometimes it simply arrives and takes its place like sunlight in a room that has sat in darkness for too long. You'll begin to breathe differently, not cautiously, not guarded, but deeply, like someone who has returned home to themselves. You'll find yourself smiling, not to cover pain, but because joy is slowly finding its place again. And in that joy there will be no trace of bitterness, only clarity, only reverence for what it took to get here. You'll look back and see how every heartbreak was shaping you for this strength. How every sleepless night was teaching you to depend on something greater than human comfort. The people who broke you won't understand it. They might see your glow and mistake it for pride. They might witness your peace and call it arrogance. But what they're seeing is a soul that no longer dances for their approval, a spirit that no longer bows to their criticism. You no longer need them to understand your worth. You've learned to stand in it even when it's ignored. You've learned that peace isn't given by others, it's grown with God. And yes, some days you'll feel the ache again. Healing is not always linear. Some memories will still sting. Some anniversaries will feel heavy. That doesn't mean you're not healed. That means you're human. That means your heart still remembers. But it also knows better now. It knows that its value was never dependent on their recognition. It knows that being deeply wounded does not mean you are permanently broken. You're allowed to carry your story without letting it weigh you down. There is something sacred about knowing what it's like to be shattered and still choosing to walk in love. Not because you're a fool, but because you've learned that becoming like those who hurt you is never the path to peace. You refuse to wear bitterness as armor. You refuse to see the world through the lens of your wounds. Instead, you hold your pain like a lantern, letting it light the way for others still trapped in the dark. They will come. Quiet souls, trembling hearts, people who have been wounded in the same way you once were. They'll find you, not because you're loud, but because your healing whispers to them in a language they understand. They'll look at you and think, if they can survive that, maybe I can too. You will become proof, not that life is easy, but that restoration is possible, that God really does rebuild what people try to destroy. You don't need to explain how you got here. You don't need to recount every betrayal. Your wholeness will speak for itself. Your gentleness, after everything, will become your testimony. Your resilience, formed without revenge, will be your crown. Because grace looks beautiful on those who've had every reason to be bitter and still chose healing instead. Let them say what they want. Let them believe what they will. You know the truth of what you endured, and more importantly, God knows. He knows every time you held your tongue when you could have lashed out, every moment you chose compassion when cruelty would have felt justified, every hour you cried out in prayer instead of lashing out in pain. That restraint was not weakness. That discipline was not for nothing. It was a divine investment. And now it's returning to you. Not always in the ways you expect, but in the peace you feel when your heart is finally still. In the strength you walk in when storms come and you no longer crumble. In the wisdom you carry when others try to manipulate and you remain unshaken. That's the reward. That's the harvest of your silent strength. And it's only the beginning, because what God is preparing for you now is built on a foundation that no man can shake. The restoration He brings doesn't just patch the surface, it rebuilds from the root. It restores your voice, your peace, your dignity, and your joy. And nothing they did can take that away. And when that restoration fully takes root in your life, you'll begin to understand why it took so long. Not because God was late, but because some things can't be rushed. You weren't just being healed, you were being transformed. You weren't just being delivered from pain, you were being prepared for purpose. There were layers in you that had to be unraveled, lies that had to be unlearned, and truths that had to be deeply planted, and all of it took time, holy, sacred time. God was not in a hurry, because He wasn't just patching your heart, He was making it stronger than it's ever been. That's why certain people had to leave when they did. That's why certain doors had to shut. That's why the loneliness felt unbearable at times. Because the quieter your world became, the clearer His voice became. And in that quiet, He was not abandoning you. He was bringing you back to yourself. You see, pain doesn't just change how you feel. It changes how you see. It exposes who's real and who was only there for the parts of you that benefited them. It teaches you to value sincerity, to crave authenticity, to no longer settle for empty words or shallow connection. And once your eyes have been opened in that way, you can never go back to who you were before. You're no longer the version of yourself that tolerated disrespect just to belong. You've been refined, you've been awakened, and now you walk with a kind of stillness that unsettles those who used to control you. You don't react the same, you don't chase. You don't explain your worth to people determined not to see it. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. You care enough to protect your peace, to guard your spirit, to stop handing your heart to those who only show up when it's convenient. They may call it distance, they may say you've changed, but you'll learn to let them talk while you walk. Because when you've tasted divine peace, you no longer crave empty validation. When you've been filled by God's presence, the applause of the crowd feels hollow. And when you've been broken and rebuilt by grace, you no longer bow to what once held you down. This is the power of healing. Real healing. It doesn't just make you feel whole, it makes you unshakable. It gives you eyes to see and ears to hear. It equips you to discern what drains you from what feeds you. You stop entertaining drama. You stop clinging to chaos. You stop dancing to the rhythm of people who never had your best interests at heart. And as you move forward, you'll notice something miraculous. You'll start thanking God for the very things that once made you weep, not because the pain was good, but because it brought you closer to the one who is. You'll thank Him for the betrayal, not because it was fair, but because it freed you. You'll thank Him for the loss, not because it didn't hurt, but because it made room for what's real. You'll look back and see that every wound carried you deeper into truth. Every tear carved out space for joy. Every disappointment revealed a better direction. This is not just healing, this is holy transformation. This is God turning ashes into beauty without asking for permission from anyone who tried to break you. This is Him raising you from ruins without needing the approval of those who never truly valued you. And this, my friend, is what they never expected. They never imagined that the one they discarded, the one they mocked, the one they took for granted would rise. Not angry, but anointed, not vengeful, but victorious. Because true strength isn't found in shouting from rooftops. It's found in walking in peace while the world waits for your reaction. It's found in holding your head high when they expected you to stay down. It's found in loving again, even when your heart has every reason not to. That kind of strength can't be faked. That kind of healing can't be performed. It's earned, lived, and breathed through seasons of silence, suffering, and surrender. And when you carry that kind of healing, you become a force no one can define. Not because you're loud, but because your presence speaks for itself. Because your story no longer weighs you down, it lifts others up, and your scars, once hidden in shame, now shine with testimony. Not of how strong you were, but of how faithful God has always been. And now, as you step into the fullness of your healing, you no longer have to look back with regret. You no longer have to rehearse the betrayal in your mind, wondering what you could have done differently. Because now you see it clearly. It was never your failure, it was their choice. Their decision to mishandle your heart does not define your capacity to love. Their absence does not diminish your value. If anything, it reveals just how much of a treasure you were all along. The time has come to stop waiting for the apology that will never come, to stop holding space for people who never held space for you. You are not obligated to remain loyal to what nearly destroyed you. You owe no one your peace, especially those who mistook your kindness for weakness. What you owe is your future, the dignity of not being delayed by your past. This is the beauty of divine healing. It doesn't ask you to forget, it invites you to forgive. And forgiveness, when it comes from the soul, is not about excusing what they did. It's about refusing to let it poison you anymore. It's about walking away from the weight you were never meant to carry and making room for something better. Forgiveness is freedom, and freedom is your inheritance. You will still remember what happened. You may even still feel the sting from time to time. But now, it won't control you. It won't derail your peace. It won't make you question your worth. You've outgrown that pain. You've outlived that moment. What once shattered you now sits as a memory beneath your feet, not as chains, but as stepping stones. Let others wonder how you made it. Let them question how someone who went through so much still carries so much light. You don't need to explain. Your peace is your explanation. Your quiet joy is your answer. You carry something now that the world didn't give, and it cannot take away. You carry wisdom born from sorrow, grace born from grief, and strength born from the storm. What was meant to silence you has only sharpened your voice. What was meant to diminish you has only deepened your spirit. You are not the same person they tried to break. You've evolved. You've healed. You've become someone who can walk through fire and not smell like smoke. So let the world say what it will. Let them spin their stories. You have no need to defend your truth. You survived what they couldn't even comprehend. You've walked through nights so dark you forgot what light looked like. But still, you moved forward. And now, that light shines from within you. Quiet, powerful, unshakable. The peace you have now wasn't given. It was wrestled for. It was prayed through. It was wept over. And because of that, it's a peace that no storm can touch. It's the kind of peace that comes when you finally know who you are. Not because of who accepted you, but because of who carried you when everyone else walked away. You didn't get here by accident. You were led, carried, fought for, loved through it all by a God who never once turned his face from your pain. And now, with every step you take forward, you're not just healing, you're becoming a living testimony of redemption. Your story is not marked by the people who hurt you. It is marked by the God who healed you. The final word in your life was never theirs to speak. It belongs to the one who has been writing beauty into your brokenness from the very beginning. So now, as you walk forward into this new chapter, do so with your head held high, not because life has been easy, but because you did not let it break you. You are living proof that pain can shape purpose, that silence can carry strength, and that God truly does restore what others tried to destroy. Leave behind what no longer serves you, bless what tried to bury you, and embrace what God has prepared for you. The story isn't over. It's only just beginning. And this time, you're walking in truth, in peace, and with heaven at your side.